In this video, we're going to explore some more options of working with text. So we'll start off with some extra basics and then move on and build on the basics to create more advanced projects. So I am here in Brother Canvas Workspace, and this is the version for the PC, which is the one that we can use offline without an internet connection. In the previous video, I showed you how to download fonts so that you could add them to your PC so that you could then access them via Canvas Workspace. So if I click on that text tool and I go to the drop-down menu, you'll see that there's a very nice feature here that shows you all of the fonts that have recently been used. Then there are some Canvas Workspace fonts, and then all of the fonts that are downloaded to your PC are arranged in alphabetical order. So it's really easy to find your fonts. Now for this exercise, we're going to just choose the basic Arial font, and then I'm going to type a word. So let's go and type. Now if I click outside of that box, you'll see the selection tool then selects all of the text that I have just typed. Now I can drag and resize from the corners or from the top or from the bottom or from the sides. I could also, if I wanted to, just rotate. And remember, you can just click your undo button if you need to go back a step or two. Now I have my word selected, and what I'm going to do is I now need to click on one of the letters in order to select the word again. Now if I wanted to break these letters apart, if I select them and I right click, the ungroup function is grayed out, so that means I can't ungroup by clicking the ungroup word. So what I need to do is go down to the bottom here. So you must make sure that you're in the editing mode, and then you'll find the process overlap function. Now we're going to come back to the first one just now, which is weld, but for now we want to click on the second one, which is the divide tool. Now that divide tool is going to divide those letters up so that they are now individuals instead of being joined together. Now this will allow me to select a letter and move it, so I could resize it, I could rotate it, but in this case what I'd like to do is I want to join all of these letters together. Now remember, you can also have your snap enabled function turned on so that you can have the letters snapping to the grid. That's if you want them to snap. So I'm just arranging them here as I would like them to be. Then what I'm going to do is just left click, drag a box around all of those letters. Now I can right click and say group. So now all of those letters are grouped together. So I'm just going to move this where I can resize it. Now if I were to send this to the ScanNCut and it was going to cut these out, it would cut out all these little intersecting bits as well, which I wouldn't want. So I would like the ScanNCut to cut this as one word. So now what I need to do is I need to weld them together. So if I go down to the process overlap tool again, there is the instruction to weld. So now it's welded all of my letters together so that the ScanNCut will now cut it out as one word. Now obviously if I wanted to do the same thing with this word sunshine, I'm just going to move it down a little bit. I could then go and I can move these letters and I could put them wherever I wanted them to be. So it's really nice to be able to divide your letters up so that you can manipulate them to how you would like them to be displayed before you cut them out. So you can fiddle around here and you can really play and just have fun with this. And then once you're happy with how it looks, you just drag your box around with your left click of your mouse and then go to weld. So now it's welded that whole word together. So those are the two important tools to know about. First of all, if you want to divide a word up into separate letters, and then if you want to overlap them and weld them together. So now we're going to go and have a look at the other options and start doing a little bit of advanced work. I've kept the word happy from the last little exercise because I want to show you how to sort out little jagged edges or pieces that don't look quite right. Now, another nice thing about working in Canvas Workspace is you can hold your control button in and roll your mouse up so that you can zoom in even more. So instead of clicking up here to zoom, you can hold control and roll your mouse wheel up. Now if we have a look over here, there's this little jagged bit which isn't ideal. So what we need to do is we're going to just select the word and then just click on one of the lines. So any one of the lines will do, and now you're going to see a new menu opens up at the top here, and these are our path editing tools. And for those of you who are familiar with digitizing, they are the same as editing nodes. So each one of these little circles is a little node that we can manipulate. So for example, this line that's not quite straight, I can click on one of those nodes and delete it. So it takes the jagged edge away, and then I can, just by left clicking on the node, I can manipulate that line. So here I also have the option of clicking on straight to line or clicking on curve. So if I click there and I went to curve, it's going to give me some more little control points where I could curve that line. But if I don't want them curved, I would then just click on straight. Now I've added in those little nodes, so I need to get rid of them because they really are not necessary. Over here as well, I could even get rid of those little nodes so that it would make an absolutely perfectly straight line. So that is how you manipulate lines by using the path editing tools. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to go and select our text again, and then I'm going to select this font, Sophia, and by the way, this is a free downloadable font and it's a very nice one, so you might want to download it for yourself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type a word, and we're going to go through this whole exercise again. So first of all, we're going to click outside of the box so that it creates a selection box around our word so that we can make it bigger or manipulate it as we want. Now first of all, I want to weld these together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the weld tool, and so now it's welded the ones that are overlapped. But what I'd like to do is I want to bring the H in a bit and I want to bring the O in a bit. So now I go to the divide tool, and now it's made these letters, it's actually separated them. So now I can drag the O across and I can drag the H across, and then I'm going to just drag my box around and say weld. So now it's welded everything together, but you'll see that there are also little bits and pieces that aren't quite right, like for example this little bit here. So I'm going to just zoom in a little bit so we can get a closer view. So I hold Control and roll my mouse wheel up, and over here I can see that this is a funny little jagged edge. So all I do is I just click on one of the lines of the design so that all of the little path editing tools become available. So I'm going to just zoom in a little bit more, because what I want to do is I actually want to click on those little nodes and delete them. So now it's taken that little kink out. This piece here I'm not going to need at all. So I can just click on the nodes and just delete. Now if we go along over here, you can also see there are funny little shapes, and it's creating a funny shape to that line. So you can just keep deleting, and remember that if you delete something that you think you shouldn't have, there's always your undo button. So I'm just going to zoom out now, and then we can have a look and see if there's anything else that needs sorting out. So for example, over here this looks like quite a curve, so let's go in there. So we're going to just click on the line until those little access path editing tools become available again, and then we can go and click on those little nodes and we can delete and change. So if I want to make that a smoother line, then I can do that. So that looks a little bit better. And then up at the top here I also saw a little kink, although that one should be there. So that is how you use those tools. And then to let go of them, you just click anywhere outside of your design and then it will release those tools. So that is how you can, first of all, if you want to divide your letters up, remember to use your divide tool. If you want to weld overlapped letters together, then you use your weld tool. And if you find any little kinks that you don't like, then you simply just click on one of the lines of the design, and it really doesn't matter which one it is, and then all your path editing tools light up and you can then go and change those. You can also even split lines. So if I show you here quickly, if I wanted to split an outline, I would decide which area I wanted to split, and then I would click on one of those points. Then I go up to the top and you'll see there is an option to close an outline or to open an outline. So in this case I want to open it, so it has now deleted or opened the pathway between those 2 points. If I just go back a step, if I only want to create a split over a shorter area, then I would click on the point and then I would add a point. So now it's added in a point over there for me. So if I want to split the outline now and I go open outline, it only opens that shorter point. So you can manipulate the area that you want to open. So let's just close that again. And now what I want to do is I want to open that entire line. So this node is going to be in my way. So I could either just delete it by going delete up at the top or delete on my keyboard. Now if I click on that point and say open the outline, it opens the whole line. So now I can change the shape by dragging and dropping. Now to close that outline again, I just make sure that those 2 points are overlapping, and then I can say close the outline. Then if I wanted to drag that down, I could drag that down. So you can manipulate your lines simply by adding nodes, taking nodes away, splitting outlines, and then closing outlines again. Now I'm going to just move this line across like that, because I want to show you that this line is on a straight path, and that is because I have the straight path selected. However, if I chose the curved path, you'll see that if I move this now, instead of the line moving in a straight path, it's going to move in a curved path. But if I want it to go straight again, I click on straight and it will put it back to being straight. So that is how you can manipulate the angle of your line or the path that they follow, whether it be straight or curved. So I'll put it back on straight. Now the last little one over here is to access your symmetrical handles. So what I'm going to do is, say for example, I choose this little node here. You can see there are no handles on the side of that point, but if I click on that, because that is highlighted, it's now put little handles on either side of that point. So I can now manipulate not only the points by dragging them, but I can manipulate the shape of the lines on either side of the point by pulling the handle. Now because it's set to curve, it's following a curved path, but if I click on straight, it will make it a straight line. So these are very important tools to know about, because particularly when we get to the lesson where we'll cover the drawing tools over here, we'll also be using these path editing tools to reshape lines. But for now, we are using them to fix little kinks and curves and things that we don't want in our text. Now we're going to have a look at placing text onto a path, and in particular I'm going to show you how to place it in a circle for right now. So I have typed the word that I wanted using my Arial font, and I would like to place this on a circle. So I go to my shapes and I select the circle, and I'm just going to drag the circle down here because I want to make this circle a lot larger. So I am now in the editing mode, and I can see that the width is 100 and the height is 100 millimeters. The maintain aspect ratio is ticked, so if I change the width, the height will change in proportion. So I still have a perfect circle. So I would like to make this 180 millimeters or 18 centimeters large. Now I can close those shapes. So I just click on the shape tool and it makes it disappear. Now what I'd like to do is put this text around the edge of the circle. So the circle is already selected, so all I have to do is hold the shift button on my keyboard in, then click onto the text as well. Then I'm going to I let go of it. Then I'm going to right click and say fit to path. So now it's put it in a perfect circle. Now I can rotate that and I can adjust it and put it wherever I want it to be. So now that's all in a nice circle. I would like to put a heart into the middle of the circle. So I go back to my shapes and I go down to the heart, and then I can resize the heart and get it to the size that I would like it to be. But I want this heart to be in the middle of the circle. So I click on the heart to highlight it, hold my shift button in, click on the text that's in the circle, and then I'm going to go to align objects, still in the editing mode. Now if we have a look, this is the align to the center along the vertical. So if I click on that, the heart and the circle will be aligned vertically. But I also want them aligned in the center or in the middle along the horizontal line as well. So I click on that. So now this heart is sitting perfectly in the middle of that circle. So I can just send this off to my ScanNCut machine and cut or draw that file. Now in the previous example, I had used the Arial font, so there were no overlapping letters. But now I have chosen the Sophia font and there are overlapping letters. Now normally what we would do is we would just go and select the word, and then we would go and we would weld so that all the letters where there are overlaps are now welded together. The only problem with this is that now I cannot apply that to a path like I did with the previous one. So let me just show you what I mean by that. If I had made this circle a little bit bigger, so we're going to make it 15 centimeters or 150 millimeters. And in the last example, I held in Shift and then I selected the text and then I said Fit to Path. But now the Fit to Path is grayed out, so I cannot do that. So the only thing that I've done differently was I welded the letters together. So obviously we can't do that. So I'm going to just click undo, undo, undo until my letters are back to where they were. So now you'll be able to see that they are not welded together. So what we now need to do, and now that we know that we can't put welded letters onto a path, we are going to leave them unwelded and put them on the path. So I select my circle and then I'm going to drag the circle down and I'm going to change the size and I'm going to make that 150 millimeters, and I'm going to just close the shapes off. And now I can hold Shift and then select the letters and then right click, and now it allows me to fit to path. So always remember that you cannot weld and then fit to path. But we want these letters welded together because otherwise the ScanNCut's going to cut all sorts of little intersecting paths and it's going to be a disaster. So now we can go to weld, but the only problem is the weld is grayed out, so we can't use it. But it's not a problem because all we need to do is say convert this to shapes. So in other words, it's going to change it from text into shapes. So we click on that and now you'll see the circle disappears, but now we can weld. So we weld those together and there it's all done. Likewise, if you had wanted to divide them first, so we'll just go back a couple of steps here. Likewise, if you had wanted to divide them and so that you could separate the letters, you would say convert to shapes and then divide. And you'll see each of those letters is now individual, so you can move them around to wherever you want them to be. These are fine as they are, so I'm not going to change anything there. So I would be able to just go and say weld, and then it will weld them all together. So that is how you use a font or text where you want to apply the weld option. Just remember that you can't weld until you've got it in a circle, and then you convert it to a shape, and then you can weld or divide and weld. So that is how that works. Now just an extra note, you can still readjust the size if you need to. So you just select everything together and then you could adjust that. And you'll be able to see the exact width and the exact height over on the side here. Then once you're happy with what you have created, you can then either save this onto your PC, so you would say save as and save it as a file, or you would export it to your ScanNCut machine. Now they've recently updated this particular feature here and made it a lot easier, so you would just export it wirelessly to the SDX 1200 machine. But if you're working on one of the previous versions of machines, you would save it onto your computer and then you would send it to a USB stick and put that into your ScanNCut machine. Now we're going to have a look at applying our text to a path, but not necessarily a circular path. So I start off by typing in my text, and I had used the text called Hello Sunshine, or the font called Hello Sunshine. And now I want to go and select my circle, but I'm just going to move the circle out and I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Then I'm going to close those shapes. Now the last time what I did was I just selected the circle, selected the text, and then right clicked and said fit to path. But this time I don't want it on a circle. I want to change the shape of my circle. So I click on the circle and I can change it to a more oval shape if I like. And then I can hold in my shift, click on the word, and then say fit to path. So now it's fitted it onto that more oval shape. So you can then manipulate that and turn it whichever way you would like it to be. But not only can we do that, we can also change this oval into weird shapes if we like. So let's just go and select. So you need to select the circle and then you're going to click inside the circle. Now once you have clicked inside the circle, you'll see that there are these little handles that appear on the sides of the circle, and that is because we can now access those path editing tools that we used earlier. It is set to a curve because obviously a circle is a curved shape, and the little handles are enabled, so that's why we can see them. So now if I move those, I can manipulate the shape of the circle to all sorts of weird and wonderful shapes. So that is how you can change the shape of a path by using your path editing tools. Now we're going to take a look at some of the other things that we can do with text. So I go to my text tool, I choose the font that I want, and in this case I'll stick with Sophia. I will then type my word, and then I'm going to just enlarge that a little bit. Now if I'm going to be cutting this, I definitely don't want the machine to cut all these little overlapped bits, so I'm going to go and say weld. So now everything's been welded together so that it can now cut it as an outline only. Now if I have a look here, this is one whole unit, so that's perfect. They aren't all separate bits. If they were separate bits, like for example, if that little dot was separate from the eye, then it would be a good idea to select it all and then right click on the line and say group. But obviously they are all grouped together, so it's fine. I don't have to group them. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to, obviously if we're going to cut this out, if we want to mount this onto a nice shape that goes around this text, what we can do is select the text and then we can go down to here where it says create offset line. Now this offset line, you can choose how many millimeters away from the actual text it will be. You can choose whether it's going to be on the outside or on the inside. Now obviously in this case I want it on the outside, and when I do the video on the layered vinyl then I use this create offset line a lot, but for now I just want to show you how to create shapes. So we can leave it at all of the defaults that the program has now chosen, except that it would be a good idea to adjust the width or the spacing away from the letters. So once you click OK, you'll see there it's put this lovely little border around the word. So now that border is separate from the word. So you could cut this from whatever material you wanted to, and then cut the word from whatever material you wanted to, and then mount the one on top of the other. So that would be one option. And so that you can get a good idea of what it's going to look like, you can also use the properties bar and fill color in here. So say for example you were going to cut this from a pink card. You could fill this with pink, and then you could see what it would look like if you went and changed the color of the text to, say for example, let's make that a turquoisey blue. So now if you put the one on top of the other, and you'll see that it's disappearing behind. So now we need to right click and say arrange and say bring to the front. So now it's in the front, so I would be able to see what my design would look like. Now remember that the ScanNCut is only going to see outlines. So the ScanNCut is not seeing these colors. These colors are purely there for us to see what our designs would look like. So just always bear in mind that the ScanNCut is only going to cut around the outside edges of each of these designs. Now I'll come back after this video and I'll explain about the filling in, but for now just bear in mind that you are just looking at what your design will look like once you have cut it. Now say for example you didn't want to cut that word out separately, you wanted it to be actually cut out of this shape. So what we can do is we put the word back onto the shape, and now we're going to select the word, hold shift and select the shape. So we've got the two of them selected together. Now what we're going to do is go to the editing function, and then we are going to say remove overlaps. So now it's removed that overlap, and if I move this word out, you'll see that the ScanNCut will now cut this outside edge, and then it's going to cut the shape out inside. So this is what you will end up with. So that's a nice tool to know about, so just bear that in mind. Now obviously then I wouldn't want that word there anymore, so I could just delete it. So there are lots of options that you can play with to create all sorts of shapes and designs, and create designs around the outside of your text as well. So play around with those tools and see what you can do with them. Now we're briefly going to touch on using text to tell the ScanNCut to either draw or to fill in by using your universal pen holder. Now there is a separate video on the universal pen holder and all the tips and tricks, but I'm just going to concentrate on the text for right now. So I selected my text tool, I chose my font, and I typed in the text. Now I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger, and we can see that these little letters are overlapping. So if the ScanNCut was going to go and draw this, in other words, just do the outlines, then it's going to draw all these overlapped bits as well, which wouldn't look good. So we need to go across to the editing tools, and we're going to select Weld. So now when the ScanNCut draws or writes this, it's going to just do the outlines for us, which is perfect. But now what you can also do is, once this design is on the ScanNCut machine, you can instruct the ScanNCut machine to fill these letters in with color. Now to do that, all those instructions are on the training videos that you get with the machine, but I'm going to just show you quickly how to have a look at what it's going to look like when it is filled in. So I've selected the word, and I go up to my properties tools, and then I'm going to look at the fill. So if you pretend that I want to fill this in a blue color, I can choose blue, and I'll see what it's going to look like. Now I won't want the outline anymore, because it's going to be an extra function that it has to do. You can leave it there and let the ScanNCut first outline and then fill. That's absolutely fine, but in this case I don't want an outline. So I click on the line, and then I click on the transparent and say OK. And now when this goes to the ScanNCut, if I choose the fill option while it's busy drawing, it's only going to fill this in. It's not going to do the outline and then fill it in. So that is how you use those tools. So play around with those as well, because there are lots of interesting things that you can do once you know how to use your Canvas workspace and then transfer the information to your machine. Now that you know about text and using your Brother Canvas workspace for the PC, the offline version, you can apply all of the tools that I've shown you in this video. The tools that I haven't used don't apply to the projects that I did in this video, so I like to demonstrate tools as they apply to projects, otherwise it gets confusing. So practice playing with your text and using all the tools that I used in this video, and then when we get to even more advanced projects, you will already know all the basics and everything will make more sense.